There's a reason they call
second
Rico
book of
Verhoeven
Enoch.
the king of kickboxing.
The story of Enoch,
Verhoeven
how the
has
Lord
been the
took him
reigning
to heaven.
heavyweight champion of glory for
There was a
7 years.
wise man and a great
Defending his
artist
title
whom the
9
Lord took
times
away.
against the best
And he loved him
kickboxers
so
in the
that he
world.
might
And
see
he
the
does
highest
this
realms
with
of
one
the
of the
most
most unique
wise and
styles
great and
ever seen.
inconceivable, unchanging kingdom of the
Verhoeven
Almighty.
can dominate fights with the
Also,
kicks
to
alone,
see the most
completely
marvelous
shutting
and
down
glorious and
Verhoeven's
shining and many-eyed station of the Lord's
and the way
servants,
he does
and of the
this
Lord's
is
immovable throne,
that
the
run
ranks and
throughout the
organizations
entire
of the bodiless
style. Verhoeven
armies,
uses
the
unorthodox
indescribable
techniques
composition
during
of the
unusual
multitude
times,
of the elements,
completely
the
bewildering
variegated
most of his
appearance and
competitors,
indescribable
catching
singing
them
of the
with
army
techniques they
of
were
the
not
cherubim,
prepared for,
and of the
these
life
expected.
without measure, to be an
One
eyewitness.
simple example.
At that
is that rather
time,
than
he said,
kick,
when
plant his foot down and
165
follow
years
up with
were
a
complete
punch.
for me, I fathered my son
Verhoeven will
Methuselah,
instead use
and after that
reflection
I lived
to
200
sneak in a
years.
quicker punch.
I completed all the years of my life,
One more
365
example
years.
is that he'll chamber his
In the
leg
first
for a
month,
rare teeth
on the
past
assigned day of the
extensive
first
jab, so it
month,
gets there
I was in
faster.
my house alone, and I lay on my
It is
bed
common to set up
sleeping.
kicks with jabs.
And while I slept,
Since
a
a jab
great
can block
distress
the opponent's
entered my
vision,
heart,
or at the very least
and I was
occupy your
weeping with
attention.
my eyes in a
But by
dream.
chambering as he
I could not
punches,
figure out what this
Verhoeven's
distress
teeth
might
rise
be,
faster on the
nor what
half
might be happening
far
to me.
before opponents
Then
expect to have
two
to deal with
huge
any
men
kind of
appeared to
follow-up
me,
attack.
the like of which I
In
had
this
never
way,
seen on earth.
Verhoeven even turns his
Their
jab into a
faces were
frame
like
to
the
clamp
shining
down on his
sun.
opponent's rear hand
Their eyes
as
were
he
like
moves up
burning
his
lamps.
kick. Impressively,
From their
the
mouths
opponent is
fire
full
was
of
coming
checks.
forth.
But too bad for
Their
him,
clothing
that
was
Verhoeven
various,
is finished
singing.
and lands a hard
Their
cross
wings
off
were
the
more
traction
glistening
of his
than
kick.
gold. Their hands were whiter than snow. And they
Here we
stood
see
at the head of
the
my
exact same
bed and
sequence
called
against
me
another
by my
opponent.
name.
But this time,
Then I
Verhoeven
awoke
misses
from
the
my
last cross
sleep,
as well.
and I saw those
So,
men standing in
just
front of
closer
me
to get one
in
more
actuality.
swing, connecting with the hard
Then I
kick.
bowed down to them, and I was
It should be
terrified,
clear by
and
now
the appearance
that
of my
Verhoeven
face
is
was
usually
changed
always
because
one
of
step
fear.
ahead of his opponent. And that he
Then those
achieves
men
this
said
by
to me,
implementing
"Be
uncommon
brave,
techniques
Enoch.
during
In truth,
unusual
do
times."
not fear. The eternal
And
God
this
has
is
sent
the
us
magic
to you.
behind Verhoeven's
Behold,
devastating
you will
victory.
ascend with us to heaven today.
Verhoeven does the exact
Tell your
opposite
sons and all the
of
members of your
kickboxing
household
and focuses
everything that
almost
they must do in your house
exclusively
while they are
on
without
inside
you
of
on
his
earth.
legs.
Let no one search
The most
for you
common way
until
to
the
land a
Lord
hard
returns
roundhouse
you to
punch is
them.
to step off angle and
I
target
hurried
the
and
outside
obeyed
of your
him.
opponent's leg.
I went out of my
As
house and
Verhoeven
shut
does
the
here.
doors as I had been ordered. I called my
And
sons
this is what the vast
Methuselah
majority of
and
competitors
Regime
are prepared
and
for.
Gaidad,
However,
and I declared
Verhoeven
to
will
them
sidestep
all the
the
marvels
great
that those
angle
men
in
had
order
told
to
me.
sneak his shin in between
Enoch
the
said,
opponent's legs,
"Listen,
targeting
my
their
children,
thighs
I
instead.
do not know where I am going, nor
A
what
lot
will
of attention
confront
has
me.
been given to how a more
Now, my
sideways,
children, I say
laid
to you,
stance can
do
leave
not
the fighter
turn away
vulnerable
from
to
God.
outside leg kicks.
Walk before
If
his
you ever
face
mention
and
that
keep
a more
his
squared up
commandments.
stance can put
Do not
both legs
abhor
in
the
place
prayers
before
of your
inside.
salvation, so that the Lord will not
And this
curtail the work
mentality
of your
leads
hands.
most of Verhoeven's competitors
Do not be
to the
ungenerous
exact
with the Lord's
perfect
gifts,
stance for him
and
to
the Lord will
employ
not
his
be
favorite
ungenerous
weapon.
with his donations and love gifts in your
To pull
storehouses.
this off, Verhoeven
Bless the
has to
Lord with the
modify his
firstborn
roundhouse
of your
kicks to angle
herds
more
and the
upwards,
firstborn of your
traveling a
children,
path between a
and the
roundhouse
blessing will
and
be
front
on you forever.
However, judging by his
Do not
opponent's
turn away
reactions,
from the
this
Lord,
doesn't seem
and
to
do not
power
worship vain
much,
gods,
if at all.
gods who did not create the
Set this
heaven
up,
and the earth,
Verhoeven will
or any
laterally
other
shuffle to
created
his
thing,
left to
for
angle
they
the
will
right
perish,
inside leg kick,
and so will those who worship
and
them.
shuffle to his right.
And may
to
God
create
make
space
your
for the
hearts
left
true
inside
in
leg
reverence for him. And now, my children, no one must
Verhoeven
search
rarely
for me
switches
until the
stances,
Lord returns
but if he
me to
feels an
you.
opportunity is there,
And it
to
came
further
about when I
damage
had
an
spoken
opponent's
to
third
my
leg,
sons, those
he
men
will.
called me,
By
and they
switching
took
his
me
left
up
leg
onto
to his
their
rear leg,
wings, and carried me
Verhoeven
up
can
to the
connect
first
to the
heaven,
inside of his
and placed
opponent's
me on the
leg with
clouds.
much more power.
And behold, they were moving.
He also prefers
There
to
I
disguise his
perceived the
footwork
air
setups
higher up,
behind
and
strength,
higher still
using
I saw the
punches to hide
ether.
his lateral movement.
They placed me on the first heaven, and they showed me a vast ocean, much bigger than the earthly ocean.
And using kicks,
They showed me the 200 angels who govern the stars, and the heavenly combinations. They fly with their wings and do the rounds of all the planets.
setting up with punches comes
There
in
I
addition to
perceived
that.
the treasuries of the
Verhoeven
snow
can
and ice,
easily turn
and the
punches
angels
into
who
frames,
guard their terrible
off-balancing
storehouses.
opponents and
Also,
forcing them to
the
their
treasury
weight.
of the clouds
This
from
makes
which
it
they
harder
come
for
out
his
and
opponents
go
to
in.
escape and puts them in a worse
They showed
position.
me the treasuries of the dew. Like olive
Though
oil,
even occasionally
the appearance
follow
of
up
its
on his
image
by
was like
using his
every
other
kind
hand
of
block
earthly
with
flower,
vision.
only more numerous. and the angels who guard their treasuries, how they are shut and open. Those men picked me up and brought me up to the second heaven. They showed me, and I saw a darkness greater than earthly darkness. There I perceived prisoners under guard, hanging up, waiting for the measureless judgment. Those angels had the appearance of darkness itself, more than earthly darkness. Unceasingly they made weeping all the day long. I said to the men who were with me, "Why are these ones being tormented unceasingly?" Those men answered me, "These are those who turned away from the Lord, who did not obey the Lord's commandments, but of their own will plotted together, and turned away with their prince, and with those who were under restraint in the fifth heaven." I felt very sorry for them, and those angels bowed down to me and said to me, "Man of God, pray for us to the Lord." And I answered and said, "Who am I, a mortal man, that I should pray for angels? Who knows where I am going, or what will confront me, or who indeed will pray for me?" And those men took me from there, and they brought me up to the third heaven, and set me down there. And I looked downward, and I saw paradise, and that place is inconceivably pleasant. I saw the trees in full flower, their fruits were ripe and pleasant smelling, with every food and yield, and giving off profusely a pleasant fragrance. In the midst of them was the tree of life, at that place where the Lord takes a rest when he goes into paradise. That tree is indescribable for the pleasantness and fine fragrance, and more beautiful than any other created thing that exists.
And of course, it can't hurt.
From every direction it has an appearance which is gold and crimson, and with the form of fire. It covers the whole of paradise and has something of every orchard tree and every fruit. Its root is in paradise, at the exit that leads to the earth. Paradise is in between the corruptible and the incorruptible. Two streams come forth, one a source of honey and milk, and one a source that produces oil and wine. And it is divided into four parts. They go round with a quiet movement, and they come out into the paradise of Eden, between the corruptible and the incorruptible. From there they go forth along the earth. They have a revolution in their cycle, just like the other atmospheric elements. There is no unfruitful tree there. Every tree is well fruited, and every place is blessed. There are 300 angels, very bright, who look after paradise, and with never-ceasing voice and pleasant singing, they worship the Lord every day and hour. And I said, "How very pleasant is this place." And those men said to me, "This place, Enoch, has been prepared for the righteous, who suffer every kind of calamity in their life, and who afflict their souls, and who avert their eyes from injustice, and who carry out righteous judgment, and to give bread to the hungry, and to cover the naked with clothing, and who lift up the fallen, and who help the injured and the orphans, and who walk without a defect before the face of the Lord, and to worship him only. Even for them this place has been prepared as an eternal inheritance." Those men carried me to the northern region, and they showed me there a very frightful place, and all kinds of torture and torments are in that place, cruel darkness and lightless gloom. There is no light there, and a black fire blazes up perpetually, with a river of fire that comes out over the whole place. Fire here, freezing ice there. It dries up and it freezes. There are very cruel places of detention, dark and merciless angels, carrying instruments of atrocities and torturing without pity. I said, "Whoa, whoa, how very frightful this place is." Those men said to me, "This place, Enoch, has been prepared for those who do not glorify God, and for those who practice on the earth the sin which is against nature, which is child corruption in the anus and the manner of Sodom, for those who practice witchcraft, enchantments, divinations, trafficking with demons, and who boast about their evil deeds, stealing, lying, insulting, coveting, resentment, fornication, and murder. For those who steal the souls of men secretly, seizing the poor by the throat, taking away their possessions, enriching themselves from the possessions of others, defrauding them when they are able to provide sustenance. For those who bring about the death of the hungry by starvation, and when they are able to provide clothing, take away the last garment of the naked. For those who do not acknowledge their Creator, but bow down to idols which have no souls, which can neither see nor hear, vain gods, constructing images and bowing down to vile things made by hands. For all these, this place has been prepared for an eternal reward. Those men then took me, and they carried me up to the fourth heaven. They showed me there all the movements and sequences, and all the rays of solar and lunar light. I measured their movements, and compared their light. And I saw that the sun has a light 7 times greater than the moon. And I saw his circle and his wheels on which he always goes, going past always like the wind, with quite marvelous speed. And his coming and his going give him no rest day and night. And I saw the 4 great stars on each side, each star having 1,000 stars under it, 4 on the right-hand side of the sun's chariot, and 4 on the left-hand side, each one having 1,000 stars under it, altogether 8,000, going with the sun perpetually. And 150,000 angels accompany the sun in the daytime, and at night 1,000. And 100 angels go in front of the sun's chariot, 6-winged, in flaming fire. And the sun blazes up and sets the 100 angels on fire. I looked and saw flying spirits, the solar elements called phoenixes and calpedras, strange and wonderful. For their form was that of a lion, and their head was that of a crocodile. Their appearance was multicolored, like a rainbow. Their size was 900 measures. Their wings were those of angels, but they have 12 wings each. They accompany and run with the sun, carrying heat and dew, and whatever is commanded them of God. Thus the sun goes through a cycle, and he goes down and he rises up across the sky and beneath the earth with the light of his rays, and the sun is there on the track unceasingly. And those men carried me away to the east of that heaven, and they showed me the solar gates through which the sun comes out according to the appointment of the seasons, and according to the phases of the moon for the entire year, and according to the numbers of the horologe, day and night. I saw 6 open gates, each gate having 61 stadia and a quarter of a stadium. And I measured carefully, and I figured out their size to be so much, through which the sun comes out and goes off to the west. It becomes even, and goes in through all of the months. The first gate, the sun comes out for 42 days. The second, 35 days. The third, 35 days. The fourth, 35 days. The fifth, 35 days. The sixth, 42 days. And then once more the sun does an about turn and goes back the other way from the 6th gate, according to the round of the season. And the sun goes through the 5th gate 35 days, the 4th 35 days, the 3rd 35 days, the 2nd 35 days. And so the days of the whole year are completed, according to the cycle of the 4 seasons. Then those men carried me away to the west of the heaven, and they showed me 6 large open gates corresponding to the circuit of the eastern gates, opposite them, where the sun sets, according to the number of days, 365 and 1/4. Thus the sun goes back once again to the eastern gates, under the earth. And when the sun goes out from the western gates, he takes off his light, the splendor which is his radiance, and 400 angels take his crown and carry it to the Lord. For since his shining crown is with God, with 400 angels guarding it. The sun turns his chariot around and goes back under the earth on wheels, without the great light, which is its great radiance and ornament. The sun remains for 7 great hours in night, and the chariot spends half its time under the earth. And when he comes to the eastern approaches, in the 8th hour of the night, the 400 angels bring back the crown and crown him, and his brightness and the shining of his crown are seen before sunrise, and the sun blazes out more than fire does. Then the solar elements, called phoenixes and chalcedras, burst into song. That is why every bird flaps its wings, rejoicing at the giver of light. They burst into song at the Lord's command. The light giver is coming to give radiance to the whole world, and the morning watch appears, which is the sun's rays. And the sun comes out over the face of the earth, and retrieves his radiance to give light to all the face of the earth. They showed me the calculation of the sun's movement, and the gates by which he goes in and out. For these are the great gates, which God created to be an annual forelog. This is why the sun has the greater heat, and the cycle for him goes on for 28 years, and begins once more from the start. And another calculation those men showed me, that of the moon, and all the movements and phases, and 12 big gates, crowned from the west to the east, through which the moon goes in and goes out, in accordance with the regular seasons. She goes in by the first western gate, in the place of the sun, by the first gate for 31 days exactly, the second for 35 days exactly, the third for 31 days exactly, the fourth for 30 days exactly, the fifth for 31 days extraordinarily, the sixth for 31 days exactly, the seventh for 30 days exactly, the 8th for 31 days extraordinarily, the 9th for 31 days accurately, the 10th for 30 days exactly, the 11th for 31 days exactly, the 12th for 22 days exactly. Thus likewise by the western gates, in accordance with the cycle, and in accordance with the number of eastern gates. Thus she goes in also by the western gates, and she completes the year, 364 days. The moon passes by the quarters for 3 years, and the fourth completes it exactly. For this reason they are taken away outside heaven for 3 years, and are not to be added to the number of days, because these ones change the seasons of the year, 2 new moons increasing, 2 others decreasing. And when the western gates are completed, she turns around and goes to the eastern ones with her light. Thus she goes day and night, in accordance with the heavenly cycles, lower than all the cycles, swifter than the heavenly winds, spirits, elements, and flying angels, with 6 wings on each angel. The moon has a 7-fold interpolation, and a period of revolution of 19 years, and she begins once again from the start. In the middle of the heaven I saw armed troops, worshipping the Lord with tympani, pipes, unceasing and pleasant voices, accompanied with pleasant, unceasing and various songs, which is impossible to describe. Every mind would be quite astonished, so marvelous and wonderful is the singing of these angels. And I was delighted listening to them. And those men took me up on their wings and placed me on the 5th heaven. And I saw there many innumerable armies called Gregorians. Their appearance was like the appearance of a human being, and their size was larger than that of large giants, and their faces were dejected, and the silence of their mouth was perpetual. And there was no liturgy in the 5th heaven. I then said to the men who were with me, what is the explanation that these ones are so very dejected, and their faces miserable, and their mouths silent? And why is there no liturgy in this heaven? And those men answered me, these are the Gregorians who turned aside from the Lord, 200 myriads, together with their prince Satanael. And similar to these are those who went down as prisoners in their train, who are in the 2nd heaven, imprisoned in great darkness. And 3 of them descended to the earth from the Lord's throne onto the place Hermon. And they broke the promise on the shoulder of Mount Hermon. And they saw the daughters of men, how beautiful they were. And they took wives for themselves, and the earth was defiled by their deeds. They and the wives of men created great evil in the entire time of this age, acted lawlessly, and practiced miscegenation, and gave birth to giants, great monsters, and great enmity. And this is why God has judged them with a great judgment. And they mourn their brothers, and they will be outraged on the great day of the Lord. I said to the Grigori, I have seen your brothers, and their deeds, and their torments, and their great prayers, and I have prayed for them. But the Lord has sentenced them under the earth until heaven and earth are ended forever. And I said, why are you waiting for your brothers? And why don't you perform the liturgy before the face of the Lord? Start up your liturgy and perform the liturgy before the face of the Lord, so that you do not enrage your Lord God to the limit. And they responded to my recommendation, and they stood in 4 regiments in this heaven. And behold, while I was standing with those men, 4 trumpets trumpeted in unison with a great sound, and the Grigori burst into singing in unison, and their voice rose in front of the face of the Lord, piteously and touchingly. Those men then took me from there, and they carried me up to the 6th heaven. There I saw 7 groups of angels, brilliant and very glorious. Their faces were more radiant than the radiance of the sun, and there was no difference between their faces, or in their dimensions, or in the style of their clothing. These groups of angels carry out and carefully study the movements of the stars, the revolution of the sun and the phases of the moon, and the well-being of the cosmos. When they see any evil activity, they put the commandments and instructions in order, and the sweet choral singing, and every kind of glorious praise. These are the archangels who are over the angels. These archangels harmonize all existence, heavenly and earthly. The angels who are over seasons and years, the angels who are over rivers and the oceans, and the angels who are over the fruits of the earth, and over every kind of grass, who give every kind of food to every kind of living thing. Also, the angels who record all human souls, all their deeds, and their lives before the face of the Lord. And in the midst of them are 7 phoenixes and 7 cherubim, and 7 6-winged beings, having but one voice, and singing in unison. Their song is not to be recorded, and the Lord is delighted by his footstool. Those men lifted me up from there, and they carried me up to the 7th heaven, and I saw an exceptionally great light, and all the fiery armies of the great archangels, and the incorporeal forces, and the dominions, and the origins, and the authorities, the cherubim and the seraphim, and the many-eyed thrones, the regiments, and the shining Otanim stations. I was terrified, and I trembled with great fear. Those men then picked me up and led me into their midst and said to me, Be brave, Enoch, do not be frightened. They showed me the Lord from a distance, sitting on his exceedingly high throne. And what is on the 10th heaven, since the Lord is present there? And on the 10th heaven is God, and it is called in the Hebrew language Arabah. All the heavenly armies came and stood on the 10 steps corresponding to their ranks, and they did obeisance to the Lord. Then they went to their places in joy, merriment, and in immeasurable light, singing songs with soft, gentle voices, while presenting the liturgy to him gloriously. They do not leave by night, nor depart by day, standing in front of the face of the Lord, and carrying out his will. Cherubim and seraphim, standing all around his throne, 6-winged and many-eyed. They cover his entire throne, singing with gentle voice in front of the face of the Lord. Holy, holy, holy is God, the sovereign Lord. Heaven and earth are full of his glory. When I had seen all these things, those men said to me, Enoch, up to this point we have been commanded to travel with you. The men went away from me, and from then on I did not see them anymore, but I remained alone at the edge of the seventh heaven. I became terrified and fell on my face and said to myself, Woe is me! What has happened to me? The Lord sent one of his glorious ones, the archangel Gabriel. He said to me, Be brave, Enoch. Do not be frightened. Stand up. Come with me and stand in front of the face of the Lord forever. I answered him and I said, Woe to me, my Lord! My soul has departed from me from fear and horror. Call the two men who brought me to this place, because I have put my confidence in them, and with them I will go before the face of the Lord. Gabriel picked me up like a leaf carried by the wind. He moved me along and put me down in front of the face of the Lord. And I saw the eighth heaven, which is called in the Hebrew language Muzalah, the changer of the seasons, of dry and of wet, and the 12 zodiacs which are above the seventh heaven. I saw the ninth heaven, which in the Hebrew language is called Kukabim, where the heavenly houses of the 12 zodiacs are. And on the 10th heaven, Avaroth, I saw the view of the face of the Lord, like iron made burning hot in a fire and brought out, and it emits sparks and is incandescent. Thus, even I saw the face of the Lord. But the face of the Lord is not to be talked about. It is supremely marvelous, supremely awesome, and supremely frightening. And who am I to give an account of the inexpressible being of the Lord and of his face, so extremely strange and indescribable? How many are his commands, his multiple voice? The Lord's throne, supremely great and not made by hands. The choir stalls all around him, the cherubim and the seraphim armies, and their never silent singing. Who can give an account of his beautiful appearance, never changing and indescribable, and his great glory? I fell down flat and did obeisance to the Lord, and the Lord with his own mouth said to me, Be brave, Enoch, do not be frightened. Stand up and stand in front of my face forever. Michael, the Lord's orchestra team, lifted me up and brought me in front of the face of the Lord. And the Lord said to his servants, sounding them out, Let Enoch join in and stand in front of my face forever. And the Lord's glorious ones did obeisance and said, Let Enoch yield in accordance with your word, O Lord. And the Lord said to Michael, Go and extract Enoch from his earthly clothing, anoint him with my delightful oil, and put him in the clothes of my glory. So Michael did just as the Lord said to him. He anointed me and he clothed me. The appearance of that oil is greater than the greatest light, and its ointment is like sweet dew, and its fragrance myrrh. It is like the rays of the glittering sun. I looked at myself, and I had become like one of his glorious ones, and there was no observable difference. The Lord summoned one of his archangels, Revuel by name, who was swifter in wisdom than the other archangels, and who records all the Lord's deeds. The Lord said to Revuel, Bring out the books from my storehouses, and fetch a pen for speed writing, and give it to Enoch, and read him all the books. Revuel hurried and brought me the books, the knife, and ink. He gave me the pen for speed writing from his hand. He was telling me all the things of heaven, the earth, the sea, and all the elements, and the movements and their courses, of the living thunder, the sun, the moon, the stars, their courses and their changes, seasons, years, days, hours, the coming of the clouds, the blowing of the winds, the number of the angels, and the songs of the armed troops, of every kind of human thing, every kind of language, singing, human life, rules, instructions, sweet voiced singing, and everything that is appropriate to learn. Rev Will instructed me for 30 days and 30 nights. His mouth never stopped speaking. And as for me, I did not rest, writing all the symbols and all the creatures. When I had finished 30 days and 30 nights, Rev Will said to me, "These things, whatever I have taught you, whatever you have learned, whatever you have written down, you sit down and write all the souls of men, whatever of them are not yet born, and their places prepared for eternity. For all the souls are prepared for eternity before the composition of the earth." I sat down for a second period of 30 days and 30 nights, and I wrote down everything accurately. I wrote 300 signatures. The Lord called me and said to me, "Enoch, sit to the left of me with Gabriel." And I did obeisance to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to me, "Enoch, beloved, whatever you see, and whatever things are standing still, or moving about, or brought to perfection by me, I myself will explain it to you." Before anything existed at all, from the very beginning, whatever exists, I created from the non-existent. And from the invisible, the visible. Listen, pay attention. For not even to my angels have I explained my secrets, nor related to them their origin, nor my endlessness and inconceivableness as I devise creatures, as I am making them known to you today. For before any visible things had come into existence, I, one, moved around in the invisible things like the sun, from the east to the west, and from the west to the east. But the sun has rested himself, yet I did not find rest, because everything was not yet created. I thought up the idea of establishing a foundation to create a visible creation. I commanded the very highest things. Let one of the invisible things descend visibly, and that it will descend extremely large. I looked at him, and behold, in his belly he had a great light. I said to him, "Disintegrate yourself, Alu, and let what is born from you become visible." And he disintegrated himself, and there came out a very great light. I was in the midst of the great light, and light out of light it carries dust. And the great age came out, and it revealed all the creation which I had brought up and created. And I saw how good it was. I placed for myself a throne and sat down on it.